I never thought I would be the kind of man to be blindsided by betrayal. I prided myself on being a good husband, a dedicated provider who worked hard for his family. My wife, Emily, and I had been married for 9 years. We had built a life together, one that I believed was filled with love, mutual respect, and an unbreakable bond. Emily was the type of woman who could light up a room. She had an easy smile, a warmth that made people feel comfortable around her. When we first met, I was drawn to her kindness and intelligence. I had no reason to suspect that the very things I loved about her would one day become the mask she wore while deceiving me. One of Emily's closest friends was Sarah. They had been inseparable since college, and even after we all grew older and started families, they remained as close as sisters. Sarah was married to a man named Daniel. He and I weren't exactly best friends, but we got along well enough. We had shared drinks during couples' nights, gone on a few double dates, and exchanged small talk at social gatherings. I never had a reason to doubt him. After all, he was my wife's best friend's husband. Looking back, I now realize how blind I was. Everything seemed perfect. Emily and I had our routine, mornings filled with shared cups of coffee, evenings spent talking about our day. We didn't have children yet, though we had talked about it. I thought we were just waiting for the right time. But there were signs, subtle ones, that I ignored. It started with Emily spending more time at Sarah's house. She would leave for girls' nights, more frequently, sometimes staying out later than usual. I didn't question it at first. Why would I? I trusted my wife. She always reassured me that it was just harmless fun. Then there were the small shifts in her behavior. She started being overly protective of her phone. When I walked into the room, she would angle the screen away from me. Her laugh changed when she was texting, as if there was some secret joke she couldn't share. She became more distant, more impatient. If I asked too many questions about her night, she would brush it off or accuse me of being controlling. One night, I remember lying in bed beside her. She had fallen asleep with her phone clutched in her hand. A text notification lit up the screen. I wasn't the kind of man to invade my wife's privacy, but something inside me whispered that I needed to look. I hesitated. Then, as if she sensed my curiosity, Emily shifted in her sleep and turned her phone face down. That was the moment the first seed of doubt was planted in my mind. Still, I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe she was just stressed. Then came the night that shattered my illusions. We were at a dinner party hosted by Sarah and Daniel. It was one of those casual get-togethers we had attended a dozen times before. I watched as Emily and Daniel exchanged glances across the table. It was subtle, so subtle that anyone else might have missed it. But I didn't. It was the kind of look that two people share when they have a secret. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay composed. I couldn't accuse my wife of anything based on a single glance, could I? I tried to shake it off, to convince myself that it was nothing. But then I saw the way Sarah looked at Emily. It wasn't just affection. It was a kind of admiration laced with unawareness, like she was blissfully ignorant of the fact that she had let a viper into her home. That night, as we drove home, I asked Emily if she had fun. She smiled at me, her expression open and honest, as if she had nothing to hide. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. That was the beginning of my quiet investigation. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I started watching more closely, taking note of the little things I had once dismissed. The way her phone would suddenly be filled with unread messages in the morning. The way she would leave the room to take calls. The way her perfume would linger on her even when she claimed she had only been with Sarah. I told myself I needed proof. But deep down, I think I already knew. After that night at Sarah and Daniel's house, my perspective on everything changed. I became more observant, more cautious, and above all, more skeptical of Emily's words and actions. I wasn't just looking at my wife anymore. I was studying her, analyzing every move, every change in behavior. And the more I paid attention, the clearer it became. Something was going on. I wasn't ready to confront her, not yet. I needed undeniable proof. I needed something that wouldn't give her the chance to lie or manipulate the situation. If I confronted her too early, she would gaslight me, make me feel crazy. No, I had to be smart about this. So I started small. I began noting down every time she went out to see Sarah. I paid attention to the times she left, when she returned, and the excuses she used. I even checked her phone bill when she wasn't looking. That's when I saw it. An unusual number of calls and texts exchanged with Daniel. Not Sarah. Daniel. I felt sick. I could have confronted her right then and there. But I didn't want to just accuse her. I wanted to destroy the lies she had been feeding me. I needed to catch her in the act. So, I took it a step further. One evening, when Emily told me she was going to Sarah's for a girls' night, I decided to follow her. I waited a few minutes after she left, then got in my car and tailed her. I kept my distance, careful not to let her see me. My heart pounded as I drove. I kept hoping I was wrong, that she would go exactly where she said she was going. But she didn't. She didn't go to Sarah's house. Instead, she drove to a hotel on the other side of town. I parked a safe distance away and watched as she stepped out of her car, looking around as if checking for onlookers. Then, a second car pulled up. Daniel. My stomach dropped. I watched as he got out, glanced around just like she had, then walked up to her with a smirk. She smiled. No, she beamed at him, the way she used to smile at me. Then, without hesitation, they leaned into each other and kissed. My vision blurred with rage. It took everything in me not to storm over and tear him apart. But I clenched my fists and forced myself to stay still. If I confronted them now, they would deny it. They would make up excuses, try to twist the story. No, I needed more. I needed undeniable proof. So I took out my phone and started recording. I recorded every moment, her giggling, the way she clung to him, the way they walked into that hotel together like they had done it 100 times before. When they disappeared inside, I sat in my car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I felt like my entire world had shattered. The woman I had loved, the woman I had dedicated my life to, was cheating on me with her best friend's husband. But I wasn't just heartbroken, I was furious. This wasn't going to end in tears. This was going to end in ruin. I spent the next few days preparing. I gathered more evidence, more phone records, text logs, and even hotel receipts that I was able to access from our shared credit card statements. Emily was sloppy. She thought she was untouchable. That was her first mistake. Her second mistake was thinking I wouldn't fight back. The more I dug, the worse it got. This affair had been going on for over a year. A year of deception, of sneaking around, of lying to my face. But what truly pushed me over the edge was when I found out that Sarah had no idea. She was just as blind as I had been. She trusted Emily completely, believed that she was her closest friend. And yet, Emily was sleeping with her husband behind her back. I knew then that this wouldn't just be about getting revenge on Emily. Daniel had to go down too. So, I set my plan into motion. First, I made copies of everything. Every text message, every phone record, every video. Then, I reached out to Sarah. I told her we needed to meet. Just the two of us. She must have sensed something was wrong because she didn't hesitate. We met at a small cafe, away from prying eyes. She looked concerned, confused. "What's going on?" she asked, stirring her coffee nervously. I took a deep breath, then slid my phone across the table. "Press play," I said. She hesitated but picked up the phone and started watching. I watched as the color drained from her face. Her hands trembled, her lips parted in shock. And then, the tears came. "No," she whispered, shaking her head violently. "No, this can't be real. This isn't happening." "I'm sorry, Sarah," I said, my voice low. "But it's real. Emily and Daniel have been having an affair for at least a year. I have proof of everything." She covered her mouth with her hands, letting out a choked sob. For a long moment, she just sat there, her entire world crumbling before her eyes. And then, she looked at me. "What do we do?" she asked. I leaned forward. "We make them pay." Sarah was on board immediately. She wasn't just devastated, she was furious. Together, we planned our next move. Step 1, expose them. Sarah still had access to Daniel's phone and email. That night, while he was sleeping, she went through everything, and what she found was even worse than we had imagined. Explicit messages, photos, even emails where they mocked both of us, joking about how clueless we were. Sarah forwarded everything to me. And then, we took it a step further. We sent the evidence to their families, to Emily's parents, to Daniel's parents, to their workplaces, to mutual friends. We made sure everyone knew. Step 2, take away everything they cared about. Sarah immediately filed for divorce and went after everything. The house, the savings, even primary custody of their children. She had enough proof to ensure that Daniel walked away with nothing. As for me, I wasn't just divorcing Emily. I was making sure she felt the full weight of her betrayal. Emily worked at a reputable firm, one that valued integrity and professionalism. Unfortunately for her, some of the evidence Sarah and I found included explicit exchanges that took place on her work email. I forwarded the messages to her HR department. Within a week, she was fired. And Daniel? His company had a strict policy about workplace conduct. Once the evidence of his affair surfaced, his reputation was destroyed. He lost major clients, and soon after, he was let go. Within a month, they had lost everything. Their marriages, their families, their jobs. Everything they had built together was reduced to nothing. Sarah and I, we walked away with everything. But the best part? Emily and Daniel turned on each other. The moment they realized how much they had lost, the blame game began. Their love crumbled under the weight of their own betrayal. I heard from a mutual friend that Emily moved into a tiny apartment, struggling to find work, while Daniel was drowning in legal battles over alimony and custody. They ruined our lives. So we ruined theirs. After Sarah and I executed our plan, the fallout was immediate. Emily and Daniel's lives crumbled before our eyes, but I wasn't done yet. There was one final confrontation left. I wanted to see Emily face to face, to let her know that I wasn't some fool she could manipulate anymore. I wanted to watch as she realized that I had won. So, I waited for the perfect moment. One evening, Emily showed up at our old house, the house she had no claim to anymore since the divorce was nearly finalized, and I was keeping it. She looked broken. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was unkempt, and she had deep circles under her eyes. It was the first time in years that she looked older to me. She rang the doorbell, and I let her stand outside in the cold for a few minutes before finally opening the door. She forced a small smile. "Hey," she said weakly. "Can we talk?" I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Talk? About what?" "How you betrayed me. How you threw away our marriage for Daniel, of all people." Her eyes filled with tears, and she let out a shaky breath. "I made a mistake, okay? I wasn't thinking. It just happened." I laughed, shaking my head. "It just happened? You expect me to believe that? You lied to me for over a year, Emily. A year. Every time you left this house, every time you kissed me, every time you told me you loved me, you were lying." She bit her lip, looking down at her hands. "I know. And I regret it, I do. I lost everything. I lost you." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "No," I said firmly. "You didn't lose me, Emily. You threw me away. And for what? A man who didn't even want you in the end." Her face twisted with pain. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt lonely, and Daniel used you. I cut in. And now you're alone. Just like you deserve. She let out a quiet sob. "Please, can we fix this?" I let out a cold laugh. "Fix this?" I repeated. "Emily, there's nothing left to fix. You don't have a job. You don't have a home. And you sure as hell don't have me." She trembled. "I still love you." I shook my head. "No, you don't. You never did. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have lied to my face for over a year. You only love me now because you have nothing." She broke down completely, covering her face with her hands. I felt nothing. No sympathy, no sadness. Just satisfaction. And then, I gave her my final blow. "You should go," I said. "Your things are in storage. You'll get the divorce papers next week. Don't contact me again." She looked up at me, desperation in her eyes. "You really won't give me another chance?" I smirked. "I already did. The moment I married you. And you threw it away." Then, without another word, I shut the door in her face. She stood there for a few minutes, crying softly. But I didn't care. I didn't even look through the peephole to watch her leave. Because as far as I was concerned, she was already gone. After shutting the door on Emily, I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. But instead of sadness, I felt something else, relief. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt free. Emily was out of my life for good. There were no more lies, no more betrayals, no more pretending. And as I walked away from the door, something unexpected happened. I smiled. In the days that followed, news about Emily and Daniel's downfall spread like wildfire. Emily, now unemployed and without a home, had been staying with her sister, but even that arrangement wasn't going well. Her family, disgusted by her actions, refused to take pity on her. Daniel, on the other hand, was in even worse shape. His wife, Lisa, had wasted no time in filing for divorce and made sure to take everything from him: his house, his car, and even primary custody of their children. And as if that wasn't enough, Sarah had taken legal action against him, reporting him for inappropriate workplace behavior. With both his marriage and career in shambles, Daniel had no choice but to move into a cheap motel. A man who once thought he could have everything: a loving wife, a devoted mistress, a prestigious career, now had nothing. And the best part? Emily and Daniel had turned on each other. One evening, I got a call from Sarah. "You're not going to believe this," she said, laughter in her voice. "Oh." I leaned back in my chair, already amused. "Hit me with it." She chuckled. Emily and Daniel had a huge fight. She tried to move in with him, and he kicked her out. I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Yeah," she said, still laughing. Apparently, he called her a pathetic, unemployed mess and told her she was the reason he lost everything. She slapped him in the face, and he threw her bags into the motel parking lot. I couldn't help but laugh. "So much for true love," I said dryly. Sarah sighed, the amusement still in her voice. "You really did it, huh? You got the perfect revenge." I thought about it for a moment. It wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. It was about justice. Emily and Daniel had betrayed the people who loved them most. And in the end, they had destroyed themselves. A week later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, signing the final documents for my divorce. It was official. I was free. As I walked out of the office, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. There was no bitterness left, no lingering pain. I had survived the worst, and I had come out stronger. And as I stepped into my car, ready to start the next chapter of my life, I knew one thing for sure. Emily's betrayal didn't define me, but it sure as hell destroyed her. The first few weeks after finalizing the divorce felt strange. Not bad, just different. For years, my life had been tied to Emily. Our routines, our shared spaces, our future plans, everything had been built with her at the center. But now, there was only me. And you know what? That was okay. I wasn't lost. I wasn't broken. If anything, I felt stronger than ever. I had faced the worst kind of betrayal. I had seen my world fall apart. And yet, here I was, standing tall. One evening, I was in my apartment, enjoying a quiet moment with a glass of whiskey, when my phone buzzed. "Emily." I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. After everything that had happened, she still had the nerve to call me? Curiosity got the best of me, and I picked up. "What do you want, Emily?" My voice was cold, distant. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, in a small, trembling voice, she said, "I made a mistake." I almost laughed. "Which one?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. She let out a shaky sigh. "All of it. Everything. I don't know what I was thinking. I ruined everything. And now I have nothing." I took a sip of my drink, waiting for her to continue. "Daniel doesn't want me. My family won't talk to me. I lost my job, my home, everything." Her voice cracked. I need you, Alex. I miss you. Please, can we talk?" For a moment, I said nothing. Then, calmly, I responded, "No, Emily. We have nothing to talk about." She let out a choked sob. "Alex, please." I cut her off. "You made your choice," I said, my voice firm. "Now live with it." And with that, I ended the call. A few weeks later, I ran into Lisa at a coffee shop. She looked great, confident, happy, free. "Lisa," I greeted with a smile. "How's life?" She chuckled, taking a sip of her drink. "Better than ever. Divorce finalized. Got the house, the car, and full custody of the kids. Daniel tried to fight it, but let's just say the courts didn't take kindly to his extracurricular activities." I smirked. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. She grinned. "And guess what? He lost his job." I raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "Yep." Sarah's complaint stuck. "He was fired for misconduct and can't find another job in his field." She shook her head. "Last I heard, he's drowning in debt and barely scraping by." I let out a low whistle. Karma really did a number on him. Lisa leaned in, lowering her voice. "And get this. Emily went back to him after you rejected her." She smirked. "They're both broke, living in some rundown apartment, and fighting all the time." I laughed. "They deserve each other." She clinked her coffee cup against mine. "That they do." With everything behind me, I finally started focusing on myself. I hit the gym more often, started traveling, and even picked up some new hobbies, things I had put on hold because of my marriage. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. One evening, as I was leaving the gym, I bumped into Sarah. She smiled. "Hey, stranger." "Hey yourself," I said, grinning. "How's life treating you?" She shrugged playfully. "Not bad. Still loving my job. Though, I do miss having you around the office." I chuckled. "Yeah, well, I don't miss the office, but I do miss some of the people there." She tilted her head. "Oh, anyone in particular?" I smirked. "Maybe." Her eyes sparkled. "You know, I was thinking of grabbing a drink. Want to join?" I didn't hesitate. "I'd love to." As Sarah and I walked toward the bar, I realized something. I had won. Not just in terms of revenge, but in life. Emily and Daniel had destroyed themselves. Meanwhile, I had rebuilt. I had moved on. I was happy. And that, more than anything, was the best revenge of all.